Hello, everyone, and welcome to Building Better Fluid Solutions Faster. My name is Scott Lavery, and I'm the head of marketing here at Apcian. We will be joined for this presentation by our good friend Jim Marion. I certainly appreciate everybody for participating in today's Peoplesoft Innovation Summit. Hopefully, you were able to catch some of the sessions yesterday, including Jim's session yesterday. Before we begin, I just have a few housekeeping notes for you, one of which is everyone is on mute. The session, of course, is being recorded, and we'll be sure to post that to the registration page here within the next week or so. There will also be an official YouTube channel that will be available, the PSFTSummit YouTube channel. So if you're a YouTube person and want to go search for that, the content on that channel is the summit sessions from last September and then the summit sessions from this event. And we will be doing a 60-minute presentation today with some time for Q&A. So if you do have any questions, you can just put those in the control panel there under the questions section. And we'll be sure to get to those at the end of the session. Or Jim, knowing Jim, might just answer them on the fly, because that's just kind of the guy that Jim is. So with that, I will now turn things over to Jim to begin today's presentation.
Thanks for that, Scott. Thanks for that introduction. So today I want to talk to you about building fluid solutions. Now, Scott mentioned the last fall's Innovation Summit, and last fall I did a session where I showed you how to, just the basics of building a fluid solution. We call it our Fluid Zero to Hero in 60 minutes. So if you didn't catch that, I encourage you to go back and find that when the YouTube channel is available. So today I didn't want to just, hey, share the same thing with you again, but rather instead, now that we know some of the basics, and by the way, if you don't, there's that session out there. Now that we know some of the basics, let's just go ahead and take a look at what can we do to build better solutions faster, better fluid solutions faster. But hey, before we get started, first you might be wondering, who am I? Who is Jim Marion? So just in case we haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Jim Marion. I've been in the Peoplesoft community for roughly 2 decades. You may have seen some of our books, perhaps have some of them at the office. You may have seen our YouTube channel where we post people, tools, tips, and techniques, 5 to 15-minute videos giving you tips to help you become more productive. You may have read some of our blog posts. We've been blogging for a couple of decades now, and I'm amazed at some of those old blog posts. So we still get comments out there on some of them that are 10, 15 years old. My favorite comments are, oh, wow, I'm so glad that I found this. And then I looked at the date and I realized you blogged on this 15 years ago, and I'm just now getting around to doing this. So that's great. Thank you all. We love the community. About me, though, I started my PeopleSoft career roughly 2 decades ago as a PeopleSoft customer. So I spent about 5 years working as a PeopleSoft customer in a financials implementation, and then had the amazing opportunity to work for Oracle for about 10 years. What do we do today? Well, we offer People Tools training, whether that is live virtual from our studio, as you see here. We broadcast with state-of-the-art equipment, teaching People Tools classes such as PTF, Peoplesoft Test Framework, that happens to be one of my favorites, Fluid, another favorite, Integration Tools Update, which would be the REST, SOAP, JSON. In fact, we just did a 1-day webinar on the Integration Tools Update. We have the recording available if you're interested in that. Just let us know. Send us a note, info@JSMpros.com. We also offer, besides live virtual, we offer recorded on-demand training. So learn People Tools whenever and from wherever. And by the way, our recorded training, it isn't just we decided to record, it's not like we took our live virtual and said, hey, you know what, we're going to record this and we're just going to release that. No. Instead, it's, I like to think of it this way. You ever been to a live concert? I've been to a few. They were all Oracle sponsored, Oracle Open World, basically. Yeah, they do have concerts there. And if you're at the live event and you listen to the replay, the recording of the live event, you're taken back to that live event. You're like, wow, that was so awesome. Okay, you ever buy a live recording or listen to live of an event you didn't attend? You listen to that, you're like, oh, That was bad. They thought they could make money off of this? Yeah, exactly. That's kind of how I felt watching some of the live recorded training that I've seen. And I thought, you know what? We're going to do better. We're going to record and we're going to master the content so that when people receive that recording of our content, any errors, issues, debugging that happens in the session, it's on purpose because we want them to learn how to fix and solve these issues. So that's our recorded on-demand training. It's actually mastered training. We also, of course, offer live on-site training. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into some Fluid content. So let's look at some Oracle delivered Fluid solutions, and then let's tear them apart and then perhaps build some of our own Fluid solutions using some of the best practices we might learn. Now, I want to caution you first thing. A lot of people, when they look at Fluid, first they look at Classic. They've been working in Classic for, say, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, a couple of decades, possibly working in Classic. The PIA, Pyramid Architecture, right around the turn of the century. So we are getting onto a spot where we could have been building Classic solutions for about 2 decades. Fluid, about 5 years. That's the max experience you can have with Fluid. And a lot of people look at Classic, they look at Fluid, and they're like, it's App Designer. I should be able to build Fluid solutions by just starting an application designer. And just like with Classic or anything else, I should be able to look at what Oracle delivered and then figure out how to build my own Fluid solutions. Like, for example, I look at something Oracle did, and I see that in this instance here, let's open approvals, we see they use a sidebar. I look at the sidebar and I say, I like the sidebar. I want to do a sidebar. How did Oracle do the sidebar? So here's what we might do. We might open the Oracle delivered solution, open the component, and we open the component. You're like, 4 pages, 5 pages. Main FL, that's probably it. What, seriously? This is what it looks like? So my first caution to you is yes, you can learn a lot by trying to tear apart Oracle's delivered solutions, but I'll tell you 2 things. It's going to take you longer to build a Fluid solution if you're trying to learn from Oracle, and you're going to do more than you have to if you try to learn by following Oracle's examples here in the pages they've delivered. Their pages are incredibly complicated. That's on purpose because they're doing a lot of really cool stuff, and they also provide us with a lot of configuration alternatives. Our solutions are rarely this complicated. They don't have to be this complicated. We can do a lot of the same cool stuff without having to be this complicated, because when you and I are developing a solution, we're solving one problem for one customer ourselves. They're solving problems for a broad range of customers, and so they're building in a much broader result. The other thing too is, depending on what iteration of Fluid you're copying, you may find that Oracle is doing a lot because the framework didn't do it in the beginning. Let me give you some examples. Let's go to Employee Self-Service and then Personal Details. I love the addresses component. This is one of my favorite components. So let's, it's actually kind of interesting. This is PUM 35. I didn't want to be too current. PUM 37 is the current HR. I didn't want to be too current so you didn't feel like, I can't do that because I'm not on 37. No, this is 35. If you go back to, what was it? Somewhere around 30. I don't remember when they made the switch. There used to be a left-hand sidebar over here. And I used to love to open this page because you look at it and you're like, how did we get from this to this? The interesting thing is this layout here, this is actually built off of it's an HR specific Fluid layout, but that layout looks almost identical to the PSL2 panel layout, except this one's uglier. This one's sloppier. And so the question is, why do they have a layout that looks almost identical to the Oracle delivered layout, Peoplesoft delivered layout? My thought is, this came first. This came first. The HR team was building content as the tools team was building Fluid, and the apps teams being the primary customer for tools and the initial customer for tools, they started building solutions on Fluid. HR did before tools released Fluid. So they built solutions, actually building the Fluid framework as they're building the content, and they did things you and I don't have to do. So that's my first caution for you is, if you're going to learn Fluid, go ahead, definitely look at what Oracle's delivered for their Fluid solutions, but maybe perhaps we shouldn't be following their example exactly, because they're probably doing more than we have to. They're doing things, they're making decisions based on what they had available at the time, which you and I, we have a far richer tool set today. Anyway, let's go back and let's look at the approvals. I love the side panel and the approvals. The fact that, what is this? What is a side panel? What is it doing? This side panel is filtering the transaction content. So right here we see all. What does that mean? We're seeing a list of all of the approvals available versus filtering. So what do we see on the right-hand side? Well, on the right-hand side, what we see is a grid. This is a grid. It's a grid with a button. Do you see a button on the page? I don't see a button. Hyperlink, do you see a hyperlink? I don't see that either. So this is a grid, and this grid has a button. The button is hidden, or the hyperlink is hidden, but that hyperlink or button has a specific checkbox. It's execute PC on row group click. Execute people code on row group click. What that does is cause the entire row to be clickable and the field change event to trigger for that one button, that one hyperlink. By the way, at any time, please throw any questions you have in the Q&A. I'll occasionally glance over when it makes sense and take time out for Q&A. So at any time, please throw questions out in the Q&A. We don't need that button. We don't need the hyperlink visible because the entire row is clickable. How do I know it's clickable? I've got a hover event here. I've got a hover effect. Oh, by the way, have you ever tried to hover on your mobile device? I have. I just can't seem to get my finger in the right spot to get that hover to work. It either clicks or it just ignores me. Maybe you can teach me. Maybe you can show me how to implement hover on a mobile device. Anyway, so the hover effect, not so good on a mobile. That's why we have the little more indicator here. So we cover this in great detail in our Fluid 2 class. We actually build a solution just like this, similar to this, where we do have the hover effect with the more indicator. So you might be asking the question now, and that's what I want to tell you. How do you build better solutions faster? The faster part is I'm going to give you the tips. That's the faster part. The better solutions, how do you build a grid that has this? Well, there you go. Step 1, add a button or hyperlink. Doesn't matter. They're the same thing. Check the box that says execute PC on row group click. Here, let's do this. New page, and let me throw a grid on here. And let me throw a button in here. And the button or hyperlink doesn't matter. I'm going to go to the Use tab and check the box. Execute PC on row group click. Well, Jim, you're demonstrating this on a Classic page. Oh, really? I didn't know there was such thing. Is there a difference between Classic and Fluid from a page design perspective? Let's drill into this one right here. I think this will do it for us. Yeah, wow. Do you see the dots in the background there? Fluid, let's go. You know, let's do it. Let's do the PSL2 panel so you can see a comparison. I'm building a brand new Fluid page here, so just so you can see side by side. What's the difference between a Classic and a Fluid page? Let's see, let's call this one IS Innovation Summit Test 2 PNL FL. Save a copy of the people code, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Yes, just in case there is some people code there. There isn't today, but if there was, Oracle put it there, I would want it. Okay, this is the 2-panel layout. Wow, that is confusing. There's a lot going on there. There is. And you know what? It looks a lot like this. Where'd it go? This is the HRE adder FL, and this one here is the exact same group box. It's just more tight, concise, giving us more room to actually develop the content, whereas over here, there's no room for content. Anyway, I started out here building a solution in Classic, except there's no such thing as Classic. There's no such thing as Fluid. There are only pages. In fact, where does App Designer store this? It stores it in PS Panel Defen. Where does App Designer store this? Oh, what do you know? PS Panel Defen. I mean, seriously, if they were different objects, they would be stored in different metadata tables, wouldn't they? They're the same object. In fact, the only thing that determines whether or not content renders Classic or Fluid is a checkbox at the component. It's a checkbox that says Fluid mode. What does that mean? Swap the rendering engine. The only difference between Classic and Fluid is the rendering engine. Now, you and I, when we're building Fluid solutions, yeah, we're going to design the page differently because we need different group boxes, we need different style classes, we need different layout. Why is that? Because Fluid controls the layout, whereas in Classic, it's up to you and I. I like to say what you see is mostly what you get. You probably heard of the WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. Drag and drop design. App Designer, you know that, don't you? You know App Designer is what you see is mostly what you get. Okay, cool. Well, let's continue this example. I'm talking about the more indicator. We have this page I started creating here. How would you get the more indicator here? We have a few more steps. You know, since I'm going to be using some style classes from I'm going to need the fluid tab of this guy here, the fluid tab of these items, the items that I added to the page. I do need to check the box, the fluid page checkbox here in Application Designer on a page properties. This does not determine how it renders. It does not make it a fluid page. The component determines how it renders, and basically it's a checkbox. This is just a safety switch. This is to protect me from using fluid style classes on a classic page. Personally, I think I don't know. I don't think there's any, well, never mind. It's there. I can tell you what I think about it, but the question is, do you really care what I think about it? I don't know that you do. So let me go ahead and throw a field here on the page. And let's just use one of the Oracle delivered just so that derived hrfl. Wait. Derived hr? Derived hr. It is FL. I was right. Yeah. Okay. Deliver derived work record out there. We're just mocking up something here so I can share with you some fluid tips. And I'm going to use a field called dummy. Dummy field. I mean, I don't know today. Doesn't that seem like a derogatory term to say, hey, let's just throw the dummy field on there? You know, what does that even mean? I'm a little bit concerned because the label for this is actually dummy. So I want to get rid of that. I don't want that to show on the page. I think when the apps and tools teams were building fields called dummy fields, they were actually thinking the mannequin type of dummy, you know, something that stands in the place of something else. And somehow I took it personally. I don't know what that says about me. But anyways, ooh, look at that tiny field there, stretched out. So anyway, I'm going to add a dummy field here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the style class under here, PSC_more. What that's going to do is give us that more indicator there, the little chevron there on the right-hand side, the more indicator. Oh, just kidding. It's a starting point. There are a few more things that we have to do. We also have to, wait for it. Oh, I hope I didn't crash App Designer there. There we go. Invalid record name. Why not? Derived hrfl. Sure, let's do that. Yeah, and it's going to need a page field name too also. So, okay, on the fluid tab, let's add PSC_show-actionable. Let's go to the use tab and let's turn off the row insert row delete. And then on the more indicator, I forgot one more thing. Let's go to let's mark it as display only. It's not a data entry field. Wait. Did I put the style classes in there? I put PSC show actionable in there, didn't I? You watch me do that. Can we get a replay of this? Can we do like an ESPN replay, instant replay? Because let's take a look. I want the replay. PSC_show-actionable. I actually did. I had to record myself because I didn't believe it. I thought, am I going crazy? Because I'm sure I put the style class in there. Weirdest thing, on a grid, if you make changes to the fluid tab of a grid, then you switch to any other tab and press the OK button, Peoplesoft ignores what you did on the fluid tab. So, you know, logically, you should be following these tabs in order and end on the fluid tab. Apparently, my brain isn't logical because I'll go right to the fluid tab thinking about what I need to do there. Then I'll say, oh, that's right. I need to do something else. I'll go here and I'll click the OK button. But I have to remind myself, always end on the fluid tab. Isn't that weird? Anyway, there is a question in chat. How do you create the filtering side panels with counts? It's a great question. Let me answer that for you. That's about all I wanted to show you, by the way, in the show actionable and the execute PC and row group click, etc. when creating a grid. This actually, what I've just given you is a fragment of chapter 3 of our Fluid 2 material. We do have a Fluid 2 class coming up here very soon, Fluid 1 and 2, and we try to deliver that as live virtual training at least every other month, and then on by request in between. Like if you have a group of, say, 8 or more, it's more cost effective for you to schedule time with us, and we can put together a Fluid class on your schedule. Great questions. Let's go back to this filtering tab here. So what we have here is we can either use the 2-panel layout. Actually, let's start doing that. I have a 2-panel layout over here, TST 2-panel, and here's what I want to do. I'm going to put a grid over here. And on the grid, I'm going to change the grid type. Oh, look at that, it's perfect. I'm going to go to the Use tab, change this to a list grid layout unordered. Let me zoom in for you. List grid layout unordered. Fascinating thing. The grid, probably the simplest way to get a multi-level solution in Classic. The grid, still the simplest way to get a multi-level solution in Fluid. But the grid is so much more in Fluid. This is a grid. This is a grid with a minimum of 3 columns. I actually think there are about 4 columns here. There's one that's for a group box. The group box becomes what they call a grouplet that then as you click, it reloads the content over here, but it doesn't have to work that way. Really, this could just be a grid with a list grid layout unordered. And in the grid, we're going to use a style class. Oh, you know what we need to do? We need to clean it up a little bit. No row insert, no row delete. On the label tab, we don't want to show row headings. We don't want to show column headings. Let's see, on the navigation bar, we want to turn off the, and by the way, we actually do this in Fluid 1 in Chapter 7. Let's go to row counter, mark that invisible, find mark it as invisible, download, mark it as invisible. And then you know what we're going to do? This is the funniest thing. We're going to turn off the navigation bar altogether anyway. What? Why did you go through configuring all the properties? It's really weird. The navigation bar, that's the arrows that move through the rows, as well as if you turn that off, it still shows the download to Excel. It still shows the number of rows available. It still shows find. So we just turn all of those off individually. So we're getting rid of all of that because we want it to look like a list of links. And then, of course, we're going to do unlimited occurs so we can see all of the rows. Let's see. Then on the Fluid tab, we're going to use the PSC underscore list dash link menu style class. I hope you're writing down these style classes. PSC list dash link menu. Let's see, I did get a note there. Somebody said, can you zoom in, please? I will zoom in on App Designer when I bring up those dialogues. I'll try to remember to do that so that you can see it better. So anyway, there are about 4 columns here. We've got an image. We have a description. Now the description can actually be a hyperlink field using people code on row init to move the description of the item into the label of the hyperlink. Then we have over here, we have another one over here. This is another field, but this field is styled with PSC. Excuse me, I wrote it down. PSC, because I don't remember all these style classes either. PSC underscore list underscore count. Now, all of these style classes that I'm talking to you about, they're all documented here in this document. This is the Peoplesoft Fluid UI CSS guide. You can find it in Moss. I apologize, I don't have the Moss doc ID in front of me. But if you just search Moss Miracle Support for Peoplesoft Fluid UI CSS guide, you will find it. So real briefly, since I'm here, this is a 107-page document. It's a great reference, a lot like an encyclopedia or a dictionary is a great reference, meaning if you know what you want to do, you can come here to this document and it'll help you find the solution. Otherwise, yeah. How do you look for a word when you don't know what the word is? I don't know. Exactly. Here's one, PSC list dash tertiary. Did I pronounce that right? I don't even know what that means. I think it might have something to do with 3. I don't know. Anyway, I just copied it because I want to show you something. Let's see. You know what? Let's do this. Let's copy this. PSC underscore list list. I want to find the link menu one. There it is. PSC list link menu. I want to copy this one because it's what I already have. And I'm going to hit the Enter key and I'm going to zoom in for you. Actually, I'm going to zoom in a lot. Okay, there we go. So paste this in. I apologize for the screen moving when I'm zoomed in that far. Hopefully you don't get motion sickness from that, but notice the U doesn't line up, the N, the M, none of these letters, they don't line up vertically, even though I've got it stacked right over the top of each other. Now, interesting thing, PSC list all lines up vertically, but link menu does not. And if you look at the dashes, you'll notice they're different. Yeah, so what's that all about? This is a Microsoft Word document converted to PDF. Have you ever typed into a Microsoft Word document? Did you notice when you press the quote button, for example, the single quote, double quote, whatever you want to call apostrophes or quotes, you press that button and Microsoft turns it into what we call a smart quote. Well, it happens to do the same thing for dashes and hyphens, etc. And so this is not a dash. It's an Unicode character for some sort of a smart M dash N dash something. But that is not a valid. Well, two problems. Number one problem, the CSS file itself is not defined with a smart dash. That's one problem. So this does not match the definition. The number two problem is it's actually an illegal character for a CSS name. The browser will just ignore it, so it won't work. So why am I telling you that? Again, one of those tips to help you build better solutions faster. Copy paste out of the CSS guide to avoid typos, because typos are the most common issue with CSS. But fix the dash. Otherwise, you're going to be scratching your head wondering why on earth it isn't working when it should be, because you've done everything right. And actually, you have. You have done everything right. It's just, well, okay. Okay, so that gets us the list that looks like this. Now, if we want to have the bubble, we need a few more fields. We need to add that field that's going to be the count. And then in the count, we want to add the style class. Oh, sorry, the grid gets PSC underscore has dash count, and the item itself gets PSC underscore list dash count. This goes on the field itself, and PeopleSoft will automatically style it this way. You know, actually, besides our classes, besides all of the webinars where we've covered that, I actually did cover this bubble issue in our PeopleSoft Mobile Solutions book. It's the book that we wrote. We were writing it as PeopleTools was developing Fluid so that we could release it as close to the Fluid release as possible to give people a head start on Fluid. Now, it's all mobile solutions for PeopleSoft, not just mobile, or just not Fluid. So it covers Angular, it covers just using a jQuery mobile, etc., service operations and microservices with PeopleSoft, not just Fluid. But in Fluid, we covered this. We used the side panel with a grid with the bubbles, showing you how to do that in the style classes necessary for that. Let's see, questions in chat. Can you offer tips on responsive grid display on desktop browser to mobile? I've seen some suggestions on the internet which appeared cumbersome to implement. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that, because grids, here, let's take a look at a page. This is a page that we build in our Fluid 1 class. It happens to be chapter 6. It looks like this, and many of you, I think, have seen something similar to this before, because it's also what we build in our 0 to Hero session. There's a problem with it. It doesn't work on mobile, does it? No, it's not responsive. You know, that brings up a good point. It's not responsive. Is PeopleTools responsive? Well, what is responsive? Responsive means that the server sends all display logic to the client, and the client determines how to render based on the rules it receives. See how that grid keeps resizing? That could be considered responsive. See how the sidebar goes off canvas when there isn't enough room for it? That's responsive. Okay, let's go back to our grid. Where'd it go? There it is. Not responsive, is it? No. So PeopleSoft uses two patterns, responsive and adaptive design. Adaptive design is the oldest mobile rendering solution. In adaptive design, the server makes the decision. The server determines, hey, you are using a mobile device, and it gives you a mobile representation. So if we look at our grid properties, and we see there is here, let's zoom out just a little bit. We can see small, medium, large, and extra large. These are the different form factors, and this would be adaptive design. This is where we would say, you know what? Make it just a plain old flex grid on desktop. But on small form factor, we're going to go with PSC list-link menu. So we would use a form factor override. Or you might say suppress on form factor, where, hey, we're going to show a grid on larger form factors, we're going to show something else on smaller form factors. You actually see that a lot with the approvals. But what about the grid itself? Can you reuse the grid? Yes, there are a ton of different strategies. The most common strategy for use with grids is to, on page activate or component post build, you get a pointer to the grid using people code. We don't have time, unfortunately, for me to open the people code and show you what that people code would look like. You would open the, you would put in a little piece of people code. All it does is it says if %request.browser device form factor equals % form factor small, something like that. Then grid dot, oh boy, I don't remember the property. And then you would say list grid. Just change the grid type. Just change it from a flex grid to a list grid. That's it. Using people code, you just change the grid type. Now, the styling might be a little bit awkward when you do that. So then what you do is you go to the form factor overrides and you just apply special stylings to the small so that you get a small form factor override. That is the most common way that Peoplesoft renders grids differently for form factor. There are so many other ways, though. I'm so glad you mentioned the grid because the grid happens to be one of my favorite fluid features. So here, let's take a look at a few solutions. Employee self-service, again, oops, sorry. Well, that's clearly a grid, isn't it? You know that. This is an inline editable grid. By the way, that's a pattern that Oracle discourages with Fluid. Don't use the inline editable grid. Why not? Well, the inline editable grid is incredibly productive, isn't it? You can just tab through all the fields, land on the plus button or the minus button, hit the space bar, and insert a row, delete a row. It's so productive, isn't it, for rapid data entry mode? You ever try to tab through fields on this? Can you show me how? I don't know how to tab on my small form factor device. Basically, what they're saying is if you're building Fluid for mobile, the rapid data entry mode inline editable grid is irrelevant. It doesn't make sense. And when you're talking self-service, I agree with them. There's one exception. Oracle discourages the use of the inline editable grid, but there is one exception, and that is when you're creating a Fluid solution for rapid data entry mode. That would be when you're creating that back office Fluid solution. How many of those exist today? Oh, most of Fluid is self-service today, isn't it? Now, Oracle is working back office. For example, there's a simplified journal entry, which is, I mean, don't you have that? Don't you have the self-service journal entry screen where you allow anyone to create a journal entry? Oh, you don't have that? Who would? Yeah. So clearly, if Oracle's creating a Fluid page for journal entries, that's for rapid data entry mode. That's for back office, isn't it? That's where it's okay to have that inline editable grid. Okay, this is a grid. It's not much of a stretch to figure that this is a grid. It's a display-only grid with the header turned off using something that we call stacked grid, something that we cover in Chapter 3 of our Fluid 2 class, where we show how to take one column and put it underneath another column. So that's what we have here, stacked grid. And oh, look at that, the more indicator, the PSC more with the grid style class of PSC show dash actionable with the clickable row here. Now this grid's going to work, no, it isn't going to work that awesome on mobile, is it? So what do we do then? We use a little bit of people code to say if %request.browser device form factor equals %form factor small, then grid.layout equals %list grid, something like that. I'm making all of that people code up because I don't remember the exact variables, but it looks incredibly similar to what I just said. You can always look up the grid properties in Peoplebooks to confirm. That's the simplest thing. Okay, so let's look at a few more grids. Let's go to manage your self-service and my team. This is a grid, isn't it? This is a grid. No question, this is a grid. It's got a title up there. They're using stacked columns in there. That's awesome to take advantage of the real estate so that it fits better on small form factor. Oh, just kidding. It doesn't really fit that well, does it? Whoa, that's pretty. Oh boy, did I break it? I broke it now, didn't I? Let's reload it. Okay, good. But here, watch this. This is also a grid. Give it a minute. Give it a minute. Still loading. This is also a grid. It's the exact same data. It's just people code, field change people code that changes the grid type, perhaps added a style class or toggles a style class on the grid itself. This is a div grid. It basically creates a stacked set of HTML divs, one div for each row with a div for each cell using a different style class. So you and I can prepare a style sheet that makes the content render however we want. This is going to work out just fine on mobile, isn't it? Let's see, let's go back. I actually put together a prototype showing the different ways you might want to render a grid. This is the same content, isn't it? Just simpler. I just have a few fields in there. That's clearly a flex grid, isn't it? Using the stacked columns concept. This is the card view. But in this case, I'm using something called the Masonry layout to cause it to be a little bit animated as it moves around on the screen. And clearly this is going to fit just fine on a small form factor device. So this is a grid. This is how you make, these are ways, these are tips for how would you make a grid work on a small form factor device. Now, Jim, seriously, that Masonry animation is so cool, but is it necessary? I mean, wasn't that a lot of effort to get to that? Maybe. Maybe it was a bit of effort to get to the Masonry layout to make it look so cool. But seriously, I mean, we're talking about enterprise businesses where we exist to make money, right? Not to create, I don't know, cool animations for our internal users. See, I've heard that before. I've basically grown up with the Jim, that's just eye candy. Stop it with the eye candy stuff. No, it isn't. It isn't about the eye candy. It is about preparing your mind to understand and to see and to recognize what's going on. You see, in real life, when you hear sounds, say for example, you hear a chugga, chugga, chugga and a loud rumbling sound, you know what's coming, don't you? You're like, no, Jim, what is coming? What is a chugga, chugga, chugga? It's a train, okay? There's a train coming. You hear the train, you see the train, your brain, your mind, your whole being, you feel the ground rumbling, you're prepared for the train to come. So when it comes, it's not a surprise. You don't just go, oh, wow, look at that. There's where the train is. See, we have a problem in our user interfaces, and that is that computers can update just like that. And so what happens is the user interface does. It changes just like that, but our brain isn't ready for it. So what happens is things move on the screen and we say, oh, something moved. Where did it go? And we have to reorient ourselves to the entire screen, wasting so much time and energy. Whereas if we just had animations, oh, Susan, I watched Susan move on the screen. I know exactly where Susan went. That's the purpose for a good animation in an enterprise system. It isn't eye candy. Okay. So what is this? This is actually what we call a data grid. It is the grid, the data from the grid. I'm just swapping grid types here. That's all. The people code behind this is just grid.type. That's it. Changing between flex grid, it's actually called original flex grid, to data grid, which I'm then using JavaScript to apply the Masonry animation using something called Oracle Jet, which is delivered with people tools. And let's see, this is also a grid. Anyway, I wanted to show you, because, it's funny, the grid, the simplest control in Classic that basically just did one thing. It showed a table. To what we see in Fluid, to, oh my goodness, wow, look at what the grid can do today. Huh. Hey, Dad, look, the grid has grown up. I'm shocked, wow. Well, anyways, would you say that a homepage works great on a small form factor device? I would say it does. You know what this is? It's a grid. This is that div grid, just like the My Team cards. That's what this is. Now, interesting, if I were to write the CSS today, I would write the CSS so much simpler than what Oracle is using here. But Oracle had to do something. They had to support IE 11. And IE 11 does not support a lot of the modern CSS3 features, such as the flex layout. So if I were to do this today, I mean, I do it in like 5 lines in our Fluid 2 class. I just say display flex. Boom, all of a sudden, all of those divs suddenly all line up and they just start laying out flex-flow row wrap. And it automatically starts wrapping nicely, resizing. You know what I think would have been awesome? I think it would have been awesome if Peoplesoft had used the Masonry layout for this. I think it would have looked a lot better than what we have going on here with the, sometimes these can get a little bit awkward because they don't actually fit in where they're supposed to. Anyway, keep the questions coming. So let's see. We looked at several Oracle delivered pages. We talked about a bunch of different style classes that exist out there. We have about 18 minutes left. How about this? Yesterday, we started on a configuration solution. We were looking at employee self-service, direct deposit. We ran out of time, though. We were talking more about configuration, less about fluid. We ran out of time. Let's finish that configuration that we started yesterday. So let's see. Talking about fluid specifically. So let's see, let's open, the page was IS. Nope, it wasn't any of those. Oh, it's SBF, emp header SBF. Yeah, that's right. This is what we started yesterday. It has the name. So let's go ahead and configure that back in using Dropzone. So just in case you missed that session yesterday, I'll give you a quick tutorial of Dropzones. Basically, you create the subpage in advance. Then you go to People Tools, Portal, scroll to the bottom, find Configure Dropzones, and put in the component name. It is PYIC dep FL. That's exactly what you were thinking, right? That's the component you were planning to open. Control J would give it to us, or you can find it in the URL there. And then at the bottom, no, top, I'm going to put in IS emp header SBF. Refresh. Okay, let's see what our starting point is. So we've got Betty Lockerty there, just name. Here's what I want to do. I want to put a picture of Betty Lockerty right beside Betty Lockerty's name, just in case Betty Lockerty, who's logged in self-service, forgets what Betty Lockerty looks like. So I'll just drag the data-bound image here, and I'll attach this to the record user ph page VW. This is an Oracle delivered record in HR that contains a mapping between employee photos and EMPL IDs. EMPL ID happens to be the level 0 key. So any content that we show in our subpage that, since it's going to level 0, any records we use that are keyed by the exact same key as the primary component's level 0, Peoplesoft will automatically select the correct rows, right? You know, that's how search records work, right? The purpose of search is to identify level 0. So the search identifies level 0, happens to be the logged in user. We get the EMPL ID for the logged in user. Every other record we use, if it shares the exact same key structure, then we don't have to do anything else. Otherwise, what we might do is grab the level 0 key, clone it, put it on this page also as a hidden display control field, and then relate all of our other data to that. Then I want to use the employee photo. By the way, this record exists in HR. It does not exist in Campus Solutions or Financials, but I have recreated it in those databases because all the data is there. It's just, for some reason, the record isn't there. Let's see, that looks good. I want to go to the style classes, share another style class with you, one of those productivity tips. How about PSC underscore data dash image? Oh boy, data dash image or IMG? We'll find out here in just a minute, won't we? Data dash image. Let's go ahead and load this up. Awesome, we get the photo there. It's nicely framed. We do have a few problems with it. We'll get to that. So first thing, the PSC underscore data dash style classes. Those work if and only if, or only when, they're children of PS apps page header. So here, let me show you something. Let's see, minus, minus, minus. And I'm going to take my head off the screen for just a minute because I want to show you something on the right-hand side, and my head just happens to be in the way. Oh, closed captioning went away too. Let's do that. Let's do this instead. Let's move it over here. And let's go to, let's find this. This is PSC data dash primary. Now notice the style class there, PS apps page header PSC data dash primary. It's a composite selector. So you could use PSC data dash primary all day long, anywhere on your page, thinking I want bigger and bolder text, and it won't work. Why? Because it only works when it's a child of PS apps page header, as you can see by the composite nested selector we see here. It tells the browser, when PSC data dash primary is a child of PS apps page header, then apply this styling. Bold, min height, let's see, font size, 1% bigger. Sorry, 10% bigger. Oh, shame on them using the exclamation important. That's hard to override. Anyway, we have a problem here. Let's fix this problem so we can go on to something else before we run out of time. The problem is that the image is actually overlaying the content below. What we have is a float issue. See, this image is actually being floated to the left and then leaving enough space for the name on the right-hand side of the image. So what we need to do is, well, we have a layout issue, don't we? And if you give a developer a layout issue, the developer is going to ask for a group box. Right about this moment, I really want to start singing Group Box Hero. Group Box Hero, have you heard that song before? It's by Foreigner. Oh, you thought they were singing Jukebox Hero. No, they're singing Group Box Hero. Everybody knows that. Okay, so this style class I'm going to use here is PSC underscore float dash clear overflow. One of our best practices is when we're using a layout only group box is to set the group box type to layout only, PSC float clear overflow. What that's going to do is tell the browser, hey, make space. You know what? I want to do one more thing here. Usually what you'll see is the job data. I don't know what the SQL would be to look that up. So instead, let's just pretend. Let's just throw something else in here that I do know I can find easily. How about empl ID? Do I really need to know my empl ID? Probably not. But this just gives me an opportunity to share yet another style class with you. So how about instead of data-primary, let's use data-secondary. And what that's going to do is just make the font look actually normal. Not very exciting, is it? But there you go. Anyway, I just wanted to give you an idea. Again, some more tips to help you build better solutions faster. How do we do this? It's all in the group boxes. We've got the outer group box, which is custom header bottom. We covered that yesterday. Watch the replay if you missed yesterday's session. Subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see it. Then we use the PS Apps page header that says, hey, all content is going to be framed in that gray background, so that we can then use the PSC data-primary, PSC data-image, and PSC data-secondary. By the way, let me turn off the label here just for the view. You know, it's one of those things. Do you really need a label next to their employee ID? Do you really need a label next to their name to tell them it's their name? Okay. Okay. Let's see. Questions in chat. Can fluid-related content be mapped to a single level 1 grid field, or can it only be mapped to the entire actionable row? Fluid-related content. You know, we didn't cover fluid-related content anywhere in the sessions this week, but I will show you that my team... See, classic-related content, you could relate classic-related content to anything, but you got me on the fluid-related content. I'm thinking about that one for a minute. I will show you that Oracle is using fluid-related content at the page level. Page level would allow you to associate with any item in a field. The simplified analytics are all added as page level, whereas the pivot grids here that are visible are all related content that's added at the component level. And it's always visible. It's always visible. So that's the thing where I think, when you select a row, would it actually change related content? I don't think so. Can related actions be at the page level? Absolutely. I was thinking for a minute, where did my related actions go? I have actually, for another demo I did in the past, I have event mapping that's turning off related actions on this page because some people don't want them there. And somebody asked a question, how do you do that? And I said, oh, let me show you. Here, let's go somewhere else. We can see related actions, and related actions are the same thing. Related content, related actions are the same thing. It's just one is it always visible, or do I have to drill to get to it? It's the same thing. And so we can see here, each one of these related actions does allow me to take data from the current context, the current row, page level related action, and pass that through to the target. That's the same thing that page level related content is supposed to do, although you got me on that one because I'm not sure in Fluid since it's always visible, whereas in Classic it isn't always visible. Let's see. Other things in chat. At times, most commonly on Fluid approvals, a jQuery JS error is observed even on the delivered PUM. What is the best method to debug a JS error in the browser? That's a really good question. First off, I'm a little surprised at seeing a jQuery error. I'm thinking about that for a minute because there was a time where people, and you mentioned approvals. The approvals at one point did use jQuery Mobile. The first mobile solutions for PeopleSoft were jQuery Mobile before Fluid. And so if you're still using the jQuery Mobile approvals, I can understand why you'd be seeing jQuery errors. You'll find jQuery, the library, in Application Designer. But if we look here at the sources, I don't see PTJQ in the JS. Or if we return back and look at approvals, see, I could be wrong. Maybe I need to do a little bit more looking at approvals. But what I'm looking for is PTJQ. I don't see it here. I don't see the PeopleSoft jQuery. I don't know that they're using jQuery today. So that one's interesting, but the question's still a good one. How do you debug or troubleshoot a JavaScript error using your browser, a fluid JavaScript error? We don't have time to go through it all here in class, but I will tell you that we can, if we know what the source EOAW jQuery. Oh, shame on them. The enterprise components team is using jQuery. I missed that. Somebody else is probably going to type that out. And one of the attendees in chat, I didn't tell you this. The Group Box Hero song that I wanted to sing actually comes from a session that I did. One of the students actually started singing that, and I missed the note where they copyrighted that. So we're going to strike that from the recording, right? Okay, so jQuery is here. So if you're getting a jQuery error, I mean, you can set a breakpoint so that when the content loads, you can actually pop you into the spot right here, and you can start walking through, stepping through the JavaScript as if you were stepping through people code in the people code debugger. I would not do that in jQuery though. Odds are very high that the problem is not actually jQuery. It's the code that invokes jQuery. How do you find that? I guess you could actually put a breakpoint here, and then where the error is actually being thrown. And if an error is thrown, it'll usually show up in the console here. You can drill to the point where the error happens, set a breakpoint. Then when you actually do hit the breakpoint, then you can come over here to sources and go to the call stack and work your way up the call stack to see, okay, now let's set a breakpoint higher up and remove the breakpoint. That's probably how I would get started. Of course, I would file a support ticket with my Oracle support as well, because that should not be happening. Okay, let's see. Somebody's asking a question, where do we access the recording? My good friends at Appsian who are running the summit will share that with you when the time comes. I'm almost positive they're going to send you an email that's going to say, this is how and where you access the recording. And as Scott mentioned earlier, that is likely to be through a YouTube channel they're setting up for us. Isn't that awesome? That's awesome. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Okay, so let's see. We've got about 5 minutes left. I have an idea. How about we do a classic to fluid conversion? So here I'm looking at the 107-page document, which is awesome if you know what you're looking for. If you don't, there's this other document here. It's called Converting Classic to Fluid. This is my favorite document for starting with learning the fluid style classes, because instead of learning 107 pages of style classes that I don't care about, because most of these are framework style classes I will never use. NUI, there are lots of style classes in here that are the NUI style classes that are very specific, like to the home page or something. They're irrelevant. Give me just the ones that matter to me. That's what this is, Appendix 4. In the document, Converting Classic PA Components to Fluid, Appendix 4. Okay, I'm so glad that I brought this document, that we have this opportunity, because this document here, it's one that Oracle provides for us, Converting Classic PA Components to Fluid. It's basically to answer that question, how do you convert from Classic to Fluid? Because I know you're asking, because we all have custom Classic components, so we're thinking, how do you convert those to Fluid? The first question you should ask yourself is, should you? If it's self-service in nature, absolutely. But if it's back office and your users are entirely using Classic back office, I would wait. Why migrate to Fluid when it's going to be the only Fluid component they're using? Okay, anyways, Oracle gave us this document, and so basically, here's how it came about, I'm guessing. Somebody says, hey, Oracle, can you show us how to convert from Classic to Fluid? Because it's obvious you've done a lot of these. And Oracle says, oh, that's an awesome idea. Let's write it up as a red paper. So they did. It's a great red paper. It tells us how Oracle converted from Classic to Fluid. But here, let me tell you this. I would never do it. I would never do what Oracle did. Why? See, here's Oracle's position. Oracle has Classic, and Oracle's support policy says once Fluid reaches functional equivalency, we'll start a clock for 2 years. We'll give you 2 years to migrate from Classic to Fluid. What does that mean? Classic and Fluid for their customers coexist for 2 years, same time. So you and I choose Classic or Fluid. So Oracle has to have both. What about us as customers? No. No, we only need one. You're either Classic or you're Fluid. It's not like you give your users a choice. Oh, if you want to, you can stay on Classic. I don't think so. So I propose, what I recommend is we do an in-place Fluid conversion. I mean, here's Oracle's strategy. Let me just cover it for you really quickly. Classic is there. Take a component. I think the average component has 2 to 3 pages in it. So what you do is for each page in that component, you do file save as. Change the page type to subpage. Okay, so now you have 3 subpages over here that are clones of your existing Classic pages. Then you create a new component. Oh, sorry, actually you create 3 new pages. 3 new Fluid pages based off of Fluid layouts. You drag and drop those subpages into your Fluid layouts. Then you start altering those subpages so that they work and look well in Fluid. Now you create new component for those pages. Then you create a new content reference. Then you add to a permission list. You see all those extra items that I created there? Items that already exist in Classic. Why don't I just do an in-place conversion? Let's do it. Let's go with a simple one. Let's do the simplest conversion we can do. Let's see, this is actually in People Tools already. Let's go here. Let's go to People Tools, Security, User Profiles, User Profiles. And let's see, let's open someone KU00. No. How about R Channing? Awesome. Okay, and I'm going to go to the Workflow tab because we only have about 2 minutes left. So can Jim convert from Classic to Fluid in 2 minutes? Awesome question. Okay, so let's open the component user maint. By the way, I'm going to cheat, just so you know, because I only have 2 minutes. User maint, I'm going to open the component and let's flip from Classic to Fluid. So on the Fluid tab, I'm going to check the box for Fluid mode. I'm going to save. And so that we don't have to revisit the search page, etc., and navigate to this because I don't have time for that, I'm going to press the refreshable URL button, and I have, in fact, converted from Classic to Fluid. Yeah, this is Fluid. How do I know? There's no save button at the bottom. But it has some problems. There's no margin on the side, no scroll bars. Let's continue. Let's finish up the Classic to Fluid conversion. Search page type to standard. Let's throw in here a prototyping page. This is not one that you're supposed to be using to go live, but it's great for prototyping. So insert page into component, PT search page. Page type search page. Insert PT search page. And then let's see, what else do we need to do? On the page itself, let's go to the workflow page. We need room. Let's resize this guy. Oh, Jim, you're out of time. Stick with me, we'll get it. Just give me just another minute here. He couldn't do it, could he? He couldn't do it in 2 minutes. We'll blame it on that search page thing. Okay, we just need a little bit more room here. This is it. I'm just going to do one more thing to show you a Classic to Fluid conversion, and then we'll call it. There's clearly a lot more that we could be doing, but this is a great starting point. Let's see, on the Use tab, check the box. Can Jim do a Classic to Fluid conversion in 5 minutes? Yes, he can do that. Just not, let's see, PS Apps Content. That basically what I'm recreating here is the PSL Apps Content layout over the top of an existing page. I'm doing this in an Oracle delivered page. You of course would never do that, but I'm doing this as a proxy for your own custom pages. And we can see that we do in fact get our scroll bars now. I do some things with layout. I'd fix the double labels here. Use the related display control features. Anyways, I need to turn this back over to Scott and the Appsian team. Before I do that, though, I want to make you all aware of a one-day webinar we have coming up here in May 20th. It's entirely Fluid. That's all we're going to cover in that day. Fluid, we're also going to cover drop zones and event mapping related to Fluid. Thank you, Joseph. Joseph just shared the link to that webinar in the chat. And we're also going to cover PTF. Basically, how do you make sure that your configurations still work after an upgrade? And with that, I want to turn the microphone back over to the Appsian team so they can close us out from this session. Thank you all so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Jim has been very active in the Slack channel. So I would highly suggest everybody check out the chat. The link to joining the Slack channel is right there. Lots of cool stuff going on. So definitely join us. Jim, another summit, another couple of sessions. You've been a busy man for us these last couple of days. We certainly appreciate it. I would like to encourage everyone to make sure that you're following Appsian on LinkedIn, Twitter, join the Slack, all this type of stuff. It's all very helpful for getting the latest and greatest info on the events that we do. And also keep your eye out for an email from us on Friday. We'll be sending out a survey that everybody would be very encouraged to fill out as we do our next summit and do our next planning. All of that would be really helpful. So we've got a couple more sessions. I believe we're going to be talking about the latest and greatest in PeopleSoft management technology. What's in your wallet? That's going to be in about 15 minutes. If you haven't had a chance to sign up for that, be sure you do. PSFTSummit.com. Everything's still available. So we'll see you back here in 15 minutes. And Jim, as always, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Bye now.